Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. To give you some context, I, 32 male, have always played second fiddle to my younger sister, Melissa, 30 female. From as far back as I can remember, Melissa was my parents' favorite. She could do no wrong in my parents' eyes, and they doted on her like she was the center of the universe. Meanwhile, I was always expected to sacrifice, be responsible, and clean up after her messes. If Melissa wanted a new bike, I was told to share mine. If she caused trouble at school, I was the one blamed for being a bad influence. On my birthday, she'd cry if I got too much attention, and my parents would turn the day into a celebration for her, too. This favoritism continued into adulthood, and although I tried to distance myself from it, the family dynamic stayed the same. Melissa, being the spoiled person she is, married a man just like her, Mark, who shares her taste for luxury and entitlement. The two of them always lived beyond their means, but my parents still treated them as though they could do no wrong. The breaking point came a few years ago. Melissa was 3 months pregnant at the time, and one night, she went out with friends and got drunk. Despite being intoxicated, she decided to drive herself home. On her way, she hit a pedestrian crossing the street. Instead of stopping to help, she panicked and fled the scene. The pedestrian survived, but they were seriously injured, and the police launched an investigation to find the driver. It didn't take long for them to zero in on Melissa, as her car was left with noticeable damage, and witnesses had given a partial description of the vehicle. Melissa came home in tears and confessed everything to my parents. Instead of holding her accountable, they immediately went into protective mode. They were terrified that Melissa would go to jail, lose her baby, and ruin her perfect life. So they came up with a solution. I should take the blame. At first, I thought they were joking, but they weren't. They sat me down and made their case, appealing to my sense of family and duty. They said things like, "You're her big brother. You're supposed to protect her." And, "Think about the baby. Do you really want your niece or nephew to be born in prison?" My mom even cried, saying, "This family can't handle the shame of Melissa going to jail. You need to do this." Melissa barely spoke during this whole conversation. She just sat there crying and occasionally muttering, "I'm so sorry." But she never once offered to take responsibility for her actions. I was torn. On one hand, I knew it was wrong. I hadn't done anything, and I didn't deserve to pay for her mistake. On the other hand, the guilt they piled on me was overwhelming. I didn't want to see my parents fall apart, and I didn't want Melissa's baby to be born in prison. After hours of being berated, guilt-tripped, and emotionally manipulated, I gave in. The police found Melissa's car, and I confessed to being the driver. I was arrested, charged, and eventually sentenced to 1 year in prison for the hit and run. That year was the darkest period of my life. Prison isn't just about losing your freedom. It's about losing your dignity, your peace of mind, and sometimes your hope. What made it even harder was the complete abandonment by my family. Not once did my parents visit me. Not once did Melissa visit me. The person whose mess I cleaned up didn't even send me a letter, let alone a thank you. The only person who cared enough to visit were my grandparents. My grandmother would cry every time she saw me, apologizing for how my parents had treated me. My grandfather, who was always the no-nonsense type, was livid. He said they had destroyed their son to protect their princess and vowed to help me rebuild my life when I got out. When I was released, I had no job, no money, and nowhere to live. I went to my parents' house thinking I'd at least have a place to stay while I got back on my feet. That's when I learned they had sold the house while I was in prison. Why? Because Melissa and her husband Mark had convinced my parents that they needed a bigger home for their growing family. So my parents sold the house, downsized to a smaller apartment, and used most of the proceeds to buy Melissa her dream home. When I asked where I was supposed to go, they shrugged and said, "You're an adult man, you'll figure it out." I was crushed. I had sacrificed a year of my life for Melissa, and my parents couldn't even offer me a couch to sleep on. Once again, the only people who stepped up were my grandparents. They took me in, gave me a place to stay, and supported me emotionally while I tried to piece my life back together. Getting a job with a criminal record is nearly impossible. I spent months sending out applications, only to face rejection after rejection. The few interviews I managed to get ended abruptly as soon as my conviction came up. I felt like I was drowning, and the betrayal from my family only made it harder to keep going. My grandparents, however, refused to let me give up. They believed in me when no one else did. Eventually, I decided to start my own business. My grandparents lent me the money to get started, and I threw myself into it with everything I had. At first, progress was slow, but then the pandemic hit, and demand for my products skyrocketed. Within months, the business took off, and by the end of the year, I was making more money than I had ever dreamed of. Over the next couple of years, the business grew exponentially, and I became a millionaire. With my newfound success, I bought a beautiful house and made sure my grandparents were taken care of. They moved in with me, and I ensured they had everything they needed to live comfortably. I owed them everything, and I wanted to repay their kindness 1,000 times over. A few months ago, I heard through the grapevine that Melissa and Mark had both lost their jobs. They had been living well beyond their means for years, relying on credit cards and financial help from my parents to maintain their lifestyle. Without their income, and with the pandemic, they were on the brink of losing their home. Last week, my parents and Melissa showed up at my house unannounced. They were desperate, practically begging me to help. My parents said things like, "Think about your niece. She doesn't deserve to suffer, and you've done so well for yourself. It's only fair to share with your family." Melissa just stood there looking miserable, not saying much. I listened to their pleas, and when they were done, I laughed. Then I said, I already helped Melissa once, and it cost me a year of my life. I thought about my niece back then, and do you know what I got in return? Nothing. No visits, no support, not even a thank you. So, no, I won't be helping her again. My parents were furious. They accused me of being heartless, saying I was punishing an innocent child for something that wasn't her fault. Melissa finally spoke up, saying, "We're family. You're a man and my big brother. You're supposed to help." That's when I lost it. I said, "Family? Where was this family when I was rotting in jail for something I didn't do? Where was this family when I got out and had nowhere to live? The only people who acted like family were Grandma and Grandpa, and they're the only ones I care about now. You sold your house for Melissa, so let her figure it out." My parents called me selfish and stormed out, dragging Melissa with them. Since then, they've been bad-mouthing me to anyone who will listen, saying I've let money change me and that I'm holding a grudge. Some relatives have reached out, saying I should help for the sake of my niece, but I don't think I owe Melissa or my parents anything. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for laughing at my parents and refusing to help my sister after everything they put me through? OP's parents and sister took advantage of OP in the most unimaginable way. And now they have the audacity to come crawling back, expecting OP to fix the mess they made. The fact that they didn't even visit OP in prison or offer OP a place to stay when he got out speaks volumes about their priorities. They used OP as a scapegoat and discarded him when they didn't need him anymore. OP owes them nothing. Also, shout out to OP's grandparents. They're the real MVPs in this story. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole, and bravo for standing your ground. Your sister is the perfect example of someone who never faces consequences because others always bail her out. And look where it's gotten her, completely incapable of dealing with real life. By refusing to help, you're forcing her to confront the results of her choices. As for your parents, their favoritism and manipulation are disgusting. They sacrificed you for their precious golden child, and now they want you to clean up her mess again? Hard pass. Not the a-hole. I'm furious on your behalf. Your parents and sister didn't just betray you. They stole a year of your life. You've already paid the ultimate price for their mistakes, and their treatment of you after you got out of prison is unforgivable. Your grandparents are absolute angels, and I'm glad they stood by you. The life you've built for yourself is a testament to your strength and resilience, and you're under no obligation to share it with people who abandoned you. Not the a-hole. Let me get this straight. Your sister makes a colossal mistake. Your parents guilt you into taking the fall, and then they turn around and sell their house to fund her life while leaving you homeless? And now they want you to save her again? The entitlement is unreal. You're not heartless. You're setting boundaries with people who have taken advantage of you your entire life. Protect your peace and focus on the people who actually love and support you, aka your grandparents. You owe nothing to the ones who threw you away. I would really appreciate some relationship advice on a delicate financial issue which has come up in a relationship I have with my girlfriend. We have been together for about 8 months and are now at what it seems a possible breaking point. To make a long story short, my girlfriend, 31 female, who is Asian, Southeast, wants me, 29 male, to financially support her parents if we get married, of about $1,000. Her Asian family is planning on moving to the U.S., and the money would be used to pay for a mortgage for her family. She wants us to have, in addition to our own separate accounts, a joint account to which we pool some money for our common expenses. Her parents' mortgage expenses would be one of those common expenses. To give some background to the post, what I proposed to her instead. I initially proposed to her that if she was struggling financially because of her parents' expectation to support them, then I would be happy to take a bigger chunk of our common household expenses, and said by doing so, I would be indirectly supporting her family as well. She rejected it. Total costs. Total costs for my share of the mortgage would probably be around $100,000 to $150,000. She said she would pay a bigger portion than I to her family, around $2,000 per month. My background and family situation. I am white. I grew up very frugally. I still live frugally. My own family also lives frugally, but relatively comfortable because they have been saving their entire lives. I would probably need to support my family financially to some minor degree in the near future, maybe $200 to $300 per month. Where I come from, family and relationships are very independent. Parents support children up until 18, but rarely afterwards, and children almost never support their parents, who have usually saved for their retirement. Her background and family situation. She grew up in Southeast Asia and moved to the U.S. some years ago and is now a U.S. citizen. Her entire family now wants to move to the U.S. too. She has siblings, but none of them are likely to be in a position to support her parents. She has therefore a huge internal responsibility towards her parents. Her parents are not frugal in their spending habits and would most likely want a rather nice house. Her family is far from careful in handling things, are not used to living in modern houses, and I am honestly skeptical if the house would maintain its standard after them living there. To put it differently, it is a financial risk. Her reason for wanting financial support. She said that she wants me to show that I can support her and care for her burdens, as her family expects her support. She said this is a deal breaker. It is a requirement. I have asked her to reconsider and try to find a compromise. She said she is already compromised by the fact that she would pay her family more than I do. Money we expect to earn. We are still students, but will both probably earn quite a lot of money annually. I got a job secured. She doesn't. So even if I would pay $1,000 to her family every month, I would struggle financially, but would obviously have less for future savings and potential own children. She would most likely be earning more money than I and could pay for all her family's expenses herself without struggling financially. But as I mentioned above, her requirement is more symbolic than actual. I really love my girlfriend and otherwise have no hesitation about our relationship. I really like her family as well, but it does not feel comfortable that I will be expected to support them financially, especially when my own family continues to live frugally. It feels like I would be prioritizing her family in front of my own, and also our future children. I am also uncomfortable with the fact that I would have zero control over how this money is spent. Her parents are outside my zone of responsibility. I am sure that I am not alone with facing this culture clash. Would be grateful for any advice, especially from people in interracial relationships or who knows people in similar situations. Update, 13 August. Thanks everyone for your comments and advice. I read all of them. Just a general request. Please be kind. Do not call her names. Remember that she is asking this because she is feeling significantly pressured herself. She basically wants me to recognize her burden and feel that I support her. It strongly leans towards that I would not agree to supporting her family financially at all. She needs to be able to compromise, and she is not so far. At most, maybe I would consider supporting them with $200 per month. If they literally cannot afford living, most likely not in a house, as this is the amount I would consider appropriate to support my own family. Her family will never come ahead of my own family. I am South Asian, first generation in the U.S. This idea of a husband supporting a wife's family is unheard of where I come from. I don't mean this as a put-down. It looks like this requirement is tailor-made for you. Ultimately, it's your money, and you can do with it as you wish. So it's up to you if you want to sponsor your in-laws indefinitely. The larger red flag is that both of you were raised with different views about money, how to use it, etc. This can be a major and ongoing source of friction. As an Asian in an Asian country, please don't let yourself become her bank account. She's taking advantage of you. I swear to you that you'd be better in the future if you don't give her what she wants. Also, there are parents in Asia that think their kids owe them for bringing them into the world. I think this is what she is feeling, that she is ready to give her parents many things because she thinks she owes them that. My husband confessed to having an affair with my best friend, maid of honor, 9 years after it happened. Our marriage was crap when the affair occurred, around our 3rd year, and I'm actually surprised we made it through. Our relationship drastically improved around our 4th and 5th year of marriage, and this also coincided with the best friend moving away. So, fast forward to when he confesses. He took full responsibility and knew I'd likely leave him. After time, I decided to focus on our good years instead of what happened 9 years ago. Husband agreed he was on the hook for the emotional trauma this has caused. He encouraged me to check his phone often. Basically, he stepped up to do what it took to keep me. The reason he confessed so far down the road was best friend had returned and was trying to get with him, and he wasn't having it. So when I found out and the bomb dropped, she decided if she couldn't have him, she'd seduce my brother-in-law, who is not the most stable person, and he ran off and married her. We refused any contact as long as she was around. My mother-in-law sides with us. I've explained to brother-in-law that having her brought up or around is traumatic for me because she never apologized, and she attempted to have a second affair with my husband. She was my closest friend, and I loved her like a sister, yet she had no problem betraying me. Brother-in-law cannot manage these boundaries and actually gave her our new address and let her send me a Christmas card which I received in the mail. How do I get the point across that we want nothing to do with her? Brother-in-law knew about the affair and still married her, so it's not my problem if he stuck himself in the middle. I'm just lost on how to make this end, so I'm not in constant anxiety. Edit. I have mailed back the card, return to sender. Brother-in-law understands. He just doesn't want to listen. It's time to start enforcing boundaries with him, meaning OP needs to go no contact, low contact with him. I, 29 female, moved to the U.S. 7 years ago as a grad school student from Indonesia. I met my boyfriend, 30 male, a few months after I moved, and we've been together ever since. My boyfriend is a U.S. citizen. After I graduated, we had a serious discussion about where our relationship was headed. I made it very clear that I wanted to eventually get married and have children. My boyfriend echoed the sentiments. I remember asking him if he saw that happening with me, because I didn't want to be in a relationship with no future. He told me he loved me and that we were definitely headed in that direction. As of last week, we've been dating for 7 years. We've occasionally talked about marriage, but we were both busy with our respective careers, so the timing didn't seem quite right. However, recently my company announced that there's a chance that my department's work will be outsourced. I'm on an H-1B visa, temporary worker, so this means that I need to start looking for a job ASAP if I want to continue staying in the U.S. Last week during our anniversary, I brought this up. I asked him if he thought it was the right time to think about getting married, as that will also help with sorting out my visa issues. He looked like he was about to vomit. After much prodding, he confessed that he wasn't planning on us getting married before I was able to get a green card, permanent resident, in the U.S. I was incredibly confused because he'd never mentioned this before. His reason was that he didn't want to be used as a visa mule, his words, not mine, by me, and that he wanted to make sure that I married him because I loved him and not because it was a ticket to getting to stay in the U.S., which can only happen when I get a green card. It took me a while to process what he said, and I asked him if he'd be okay to move to Indonesia with me, which he wasn't. I did not react well and ended up leaving because I couldn't deal with what just happened. I am still in disbelief. I started dating him because he was the kindest, most thoughtful, and generous man I'd met. I now feel like I wasted 7 years. While the visa issues are certainly a problem, I did not date him with the intention of making him my safety net. I cannot believe that even after nearly a decade together, he doesn't know what kind of person I am. I feel like this relationship is possibly over, and it hurts. It hurts so much. That's really a messed up thing for him to do. If it's not clear to him after 7 years that you love him, then there's something wrong on his end. Immigrant status should not matter. It doesn't define you. Seriously, if you were using him, wouldn't you have pushed for marriage much sooner? Like right after you graduated? Unbelievable. I am so sorry. He is a complete a-hole for saying that. I really want to believe there is something else going on and he spoke out of his butt and feels terrible about it. But I don't know him like you do. You need to decide if a larger conversation is worth having before sending the relationship to the grave. He took the easy way out. 7 years already, and if he isn't ready to get married now, he never will be. Do you live together? He came out with a BS excuse. When you get your green card on your own, drop him so you can focus all your energy on getting a new job. I am sorry this is happening to you, but he doesn't love you if there's a possibility of having to separate because of a working visa, and he is not interested in maintaining a relationship neither in the US nor Indonesia. He refers to the act of getting married to you as being a visa mule. What are you, a mail-order bride? You are an educated lady and a working professional who had the misfortune of wasting 7 years on a loser. Break up. Hope everything gets better for you. Addressing some of the stuff in the comments. I've been on an H-1B visa for a bit more than 2 years now. I was on STEM OPT for about 3 years after grad school. I had terrible luck with the H-1B lottery, and I got one in the last round I was eligible to apply in. Getting permanent residence in the U.S. is not easy. I know people who've been here for 15 plus years who are still waiting for their permanent residence. For those of you who DM'd me calling me a gold digger, you guys made me laugh. I am aware of the legalities around sponsoring a spouse for a PR, including the financial aspect. It shouldn't have been a problem for the following reasons. I'm a STEM major who recently shifted into management. I work for a large company and I do quite well for myself. My boyfriend is a teacher and our incomes are not comparable. He earns around $60,000. I earn close to $300,000. We've been living together for 6 years. We have a shared account to pay for expenses like rent and utilities that we both deposit a percentage of our salary into. The rest of our money goes into our own private accounts and we don't manage each other's money. Because I'm frugal, I've saved up quite a bit of money in the form of savings plus investments. If my boyfriend was worried about the legality of sponsoring me financially for 10 plus years, I would have happily discussed moving the money around. I was even considering buying a house, so we could have made that a joint ownership thing. The point is, we could have figured it out. I haven't relied on him financially ever, and I didn't intend on doing that in the future. I might not have considered everything, but you have to note that I thought about the marriage for visa thing recently, only when the threat of possibly having to leave loomed over me. This isn't something I'd thought about in detail at all. Regarding my situation back home in Indonesia, I come from a very religious and conservative family and had a horrible childhood. My family doesn't support my career choices. I cut contact with my family when I moved to the US, so they are not in the picture at all. I was on great terms with my boyfriend's family. They loved me. Now for the actual update. He is now my ex-boyfriend. I took a few days to collect myself and then reached out to him wanting to talk. He agreed. It turns out that he has been insecure about earning less than I did for a while. Apparently, his friends have been poking fun at our relationship, calling me the sugar mommy because I take care of most of the expenses. He never told me this until now. He apparently didn't feel like an equal because our pay differs so much and started feeling that I was only with him as a quick way to get a PR here. I was speechless. I couldn't believe that his friends gaslighted him into doubting our relationship. I reminded him how he had supported me when I was in grad school, like getting me groceries when I had little money to spare, allowing me to stay with him rent-free in my last year of grad school to help me minimize expenses so I didn't have to take out a loan. letting me use his car when I was attending interviews. I told him that he did them because he loved me, and me taking on the majority of the household expenses since I started working is my way of paying him back for all the things he did for me back then. He said that he gets what I'm saying, but also that he didn't expect me to start earning more than him straight off the bat. I asked if there was any chance he'd consider going to couples therapy, like some of you had suggested, and he declined because he didn't think he was being unreasonable. He said that he wanted to be the provider in a relationship and that he didn't feel like one in ours. So there's no going back from this unless I quit my job and found another that paid substantially less, which isn't going to happen. Well, long story short, we broke up. His family is in disbelief. They were hoping that he would propose soon. I've moved into an Airbnb for now. A little bit of good news to end this update with. My company offered me a similar role in a different department. However, this is based out of France, and there's a small decrease in pay. I've always dreamed about living in Europe, and I've accepted this offer. I've signed the relocation agreement, and I'll move there in the next 8 to 12 weeks. Imagine conning yourself out of a happy relationship with a partner who loves you and allows you to be better off financially because your friends tease you about not earning the most. Why on earth would you not be overjoyed at the possibility of a happy relationship? Plus, the bonus of living way above what your means would have been without your partner. I'm so glad this has turned into a positive for you, OP, and I hope Europe treats you well.